What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Sin City Crypto. I am David. I'm joined with Robin, and today we are talking about regulation in Europe involving cryptocurrency and when that's going to be implemented. Without wasting any time, let's go ahead and get right into it. The European Council passes Mika, which is the markets in crypto assets. Their landmark regulation was passed in the European Council this morning, Wednesday morning. Now, there were some concerns that were raised on the limitations set on non-euro denominated stablecoins, and if approved, laws will be in place at the start of 2024 at the earliest, with the stablecoin laws set to come first. What is in this Mika bill? It establishes licensing requirements for exchanges and wallet providers. There's capital requirements that are expected to prevent the depegging events, such as what happened with Terra Luna, and preventing other major liquidity issues. Here's what's intriguing to me is regulators in the EU are awaiting the upcoming meeting to discuss regulation with the United States of America. So a little surprising to see the EU take charge on regulating crypto, seeing as the United States is known as the world leading financial power. Are you surprised at that, Robin? Are you surprised to see EU take the horns? Is the U.S. going to follow suit? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it's a little chilly in the studio, if you're wondering why I got the Cam Newton look. Second of all, I do think the U.S. is probably going to follow suit, do something similar to what the EU is doing. I just don't see it coming in a timely manner because the United States drags their feet. But let's unpackage what we're talking about here with the EU. You know, this is an extremely damning piece of legislation that was just passed with a lot of concerns. Some of my biggest concerns are with the KYC, not only to the exchanges, because I think those were expected, but to wallets, particularly custodial wallets that are outside of exchanges like your MetaMask. I'm not sure what regulation as far as that's going to look like with KYC, but I don't know, man. Do you think they're going to be able to KYC like a MetaMask wallet, as an example, David, or a Trust wallet or something like that?
They can try.
I think they have KYC with Trust wallet, don't they? No.
Decentralized wallet. No. They can try, and I'm sure they'll probably try to work a way around it, but I don't see that being successful. But then again, I'm not a regulator. I'm not a politician. I don't know what they're capable of doing. But here are a few things of importance with this Mika bill. Now, this was introduced in June, and there was some language that people were not too happy about. And apparently in this final draft bill, which, by the way, means that there's no other changes that will be made to this bill. Once it gets voted on early next year, it becomes law immediately. But laws aren't going to go into effect for another year. Like I said, with stablecoins coming first. In the final draft, tokens are broken up into three essentially categories. You have utility tokens, which is going to be 90% of tokens. ARTs, which is asset reference tokens. So anything pegged to another asset, like a stable coin that's pegged to the euro or the dollar. And then you have EMTs, which are e-money tokens. What's interesting to me is anyone that is doing an ICO, whether it's a fully community ICO or whether it's backed by VC funds, you're going to have to submit a white paper to the regulator. And so what are your thoughts on that, Robin?
Well, if you're submitting a white paper, obviously it has to be approved or denied, right? I mean, why else submit it? So who is going to decide who gets approval for a token listing? Essentially, this is what's happening. Like, it's almost like very similar to the SEC. Hey, come in and register as a security. So I think a lot of projects are probably just going to bypass that, right? I mean, maybe there's a few that test the waters, but I think you're going to have an environment where you're going to have tokens that aren't available in the EU and are available in other places for the simple fact that projects probably aren't going to comply and they're not going to submit their white paper for review and change their vision for the project for the because the EU administrators or policymakers, they don't agree with your vision. And so I it's just a ton of control here, man. A ton of control, right?
That's what regulation is, right?
Yeah, but this is like overreaching control. I mean, you have KYC on decentralized wallets. I mean, they didn't go as far as saying it in that exact terms, but that's essentially what they're doing. KYC on decentralized targets. They're basically regulating algorithmic stable coins with the form of Terra Lunas, preventing another Terra Luna collapse. You have, hey, you can't list an ICO unless you submit a white paper and then we approve it. And it's a scary place. And we were discussing this on our live show, but what happens? Are exchanges going to offer different products for the EU and then products globally? Like we see that with Binance right now, right? You got Binance.us. They offer a litany of products that are compliant with US regulation. And then you got the regular Binance that it's a free for all. You got everything in there. And so we're going to have a market that's growing where certain demographics or certain countries or areas are going to be ousted from participating. And you're going to have innovation that's going to go to certain places and not to others. And I think this is terrible. Absolutely terrible, top to bottom. What we would like to see is maybe, the KYC, that makes sense. I thought that was coming, at least for the exchanges. But what happens if they mandate KYC on a wallet, on a decentralized wallet like MetaMask? And obviously, it being decentralized, if they don't comply, are they going to ban MetaMask in the EU in the same way that the US has banned Tornado Cash here in the States?
Well, I mean,
wouldn't surprise me, right? I mean, that seems like the direction we're going. And what happens if your blockchain hosts a algorithmic stable coins and they're like, hey, algorithmic stable coins are not stable. We don't like them. We're not trying to have another Terra Luna. And it's integrated into your ethos. I mean, are they going to block just that smart contract and then not the base layer one smart contract? Are they going to try to block the Jeb stable coin but not Cardano? Are they going to try to block the USDD? What's the one on Tron?
The USDD.
Yeah, and then not the Tron network. You're getting into so much gray area, and my concern is that there's just going to be an overarching. Well, if you can't comply, then you can't be traded here in the EU. And then if there is success in rolling it out and implementation, and you can see America following suit. Like, hey, look, they banned MetaMask and it worked. Cool, let's do it here too. Because people aren't paying taxes because they're transacting with MetaMask.
World governments definitely want, the IMF definitely wants
NFT thing too, man. I mean, you got to think that, these white papers and things like that and these tokens, a lot of those rules can be applied to NFTs. And so if you're just trying to roll out an NFT line because you're an artist, next thing you know, you might have to submit some freaking blueprint and go through some KYC regulation or whatever it is.
Well, you do.
That's what I'm saying.
So the rule on, the language in the draft, the final draft regarding NFTs is if you have a collection, say like Bored Apes, like Moonbirds, and the artwork looks similar, then yeah, you would have to file and submit a white paper.
That's crazy, man. Like, can you imagine that you're basically filing for approval with the EU to launch an NFT line? I mean, okay, we're thinking about this in the scheme of of pictures, right? But what happens if you get the music industry and somebody wants to release an album and in an NFT form? Do you gotta get a EU's approval to release an album? It's the same thing. I mean, how do you differentiate an NFT that's in picture format and one that's in music format? It's the same thing. What do all of a sudden I gotta go get approval from the EU? Like, hey guys, and then what's that approval process look like? What if I want to launch the song, next week? Well, I gotta wait for 6 months for you guys to look over the paperwork.
Yeah, look, there's only the draft
bro.
bill was 1,000 pages long, and it's rumored to be there's only a handful of people who fully understand what's in it. I am not one of them, and neither is Robin. But based off of the little tidbits of information we've been able to garner, and the last thing I want to talk about is decentralized and DeFi. So this is where it kind of gets in the gray area. Is in the bill, it talks about DeFi and decentralization. That'll be up to the regulators to decide whether something is decentralized or not, which in my opinion, A, gives too much power to the regulators, and B, you're murking the waters. Why? It needs to be cut and dry, black and white. If you do this or you have these attributes, you are decentralized. If you don't, you are not decentralized. But leaving it in the hands of the regulators to interpret what's decentralized. I mean, am I the only one thinking this is a bad thing?
Yeah.
I'm the only one thinking it's a bad thing?
No, I mean, like, hell yeah, it's a bad thing. It's crazy to me. And for me, maybe, I don't know, maybe I have a different perspective on it, but I just think the simplest way is to regulate the onboard and offboard. And then, because I think the biggest concern when it comes to nation states and governments is taxation and seeing how much money you make or lose or whatever it is. And if you put in, here in Vegas, here's a great example. Here in Las Vegas, you can at the end of the year, you can take your gambling for how much money you put in, how much money you came out. And that's all you really got to do. You just got to provide the paperwork that says it. Hey, I lost this amount of money in this casino.
But who gives you the paperwork?
The casino does. And here's the thing. So, and what I'm saying is do the same thing with exchanges. The exchanges say, hey, you put $1,000 in, you took $3,000 out. Now, does the government or the agency need to know that I put $1,000 into Coinbase and then it went to a MetaMask, then I bought some ICO and then I sold it, I sold half of it here and I bought this and I done this. At the end of the day, it came back to my Coinbase account and then I sold.
You need an on and off ramp. You need a fiat on and off ramp.
Yeah, at the fiat and on and off ramp, just that's where you do your KYC and that's where you determine profit and loss and you just go from there. If I make $1 million on Bitcoin, I got to cash it out, right? If I start with 10,000, I bought Bitcoin very early. I start with 10,000, and now say I have $2 million, and I decide to cash it out. How am I going to cash it out? Obviously, I put the 10,000 in. I put the 10,000 in Bitcoin in an exchange. So there's a KYC, me putting 10,000 in, and then you know what? There's a KYC of me withdrawing 2 million. How I got to that number is irrelevant.
Well, here's where you run into the issue is capital gains tax, at least here in the U.S. If you hold for less than,
realized gains.
No, if you hold for less than a year, you're taxed at a higher bracket than you are if you hold more than a year.
I know in the current situation, it's not set up in that manner. And that's why I'm discussing the fact that perhaps it would be easier instead of trying to track and trace all these decentralized platforms and see how many trades went in this and when you executed it. If you just made up, if you created new laws where simply is how much money this year did you make on crypto, or how much money did you cash out this year? How much money did you put in? If you just went off of that, that would be the simplest way of doing it. Maybe there's some things that hamper that mentality. Maybe there's some exploits that you could get through that the government doesn't want you to do. But at face value, it works for the gambling system here in Vegas. That's something we're familiar with, and I just don't understand why. Hey, I lost $1,000 trading crypto. Does it really matter if I made $300 on this trade, but overall I had a net negative? That should be taken into account. And then at that point, I shouldn't be paying taxes. Conversely, if the opposite happened, I put in $10,000 this year, but I cashed out 20 grand. Hey, tax me on 10 grand. I think that's the simplest way of doing it. Maybe not the best or the smartest, but I don't know. I'm just looking at it from the Las Vegas perspective.
What I think is interesting, to wrap this thing up, is these new laws, if they get voted on and passed, will come into effect early to mid 2024. Guess what else happens early to mid 2024? Is the Bitcoin halving, which has been historically a catalyst for a new bull market. How will these things coincide? Will they clash? Will they work in tandem? We'll find out, but we will definitely keep our ear to the stone, or whatever they say, on this Mika bill and what this regulation means for crypto as a whole. That'll do it for the video today. On behalf of myself and Robin, we thank you so much. Make sure to come join us Monday through Friday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time for our live show. Until the next video, my friends, take care.